All right, today we're tackling one of the biggest, most misunderstood names in all of history, Genghis Khan.
So, when you hear that name, what's the first thing that pops into your head? I'm guessing it's this image, right? A fierce warrior, a brilliant military mind, the ultimate world conqueror. And you know what? You're not wrong. He was absolutely all of those things. But what if I told you his most powerful, most game-changing weapon wasn't his army at all? What if it was something, well, a lot more boring? Like, say, a postal service. To really get this, we have to peel back the layers of legend and caricature and meet the man himself. This is the Khan you probably don't know. I mean, his early life was just unimaginably brutal. He was born as Temujin, and the legend goes that he came into the world clutching a blood clot in his fist, a sign of a great destiny. But wow, that destiny was almost snuffed out before it began. At just 9 years old, his father was poisoned, and his own clan, they just abandoned his family, leaving them to literally starve on the plains. It gets worse. As a teenager, he had to kill his own half-brother in a fight over food just to secure his place as head of the family. Then he was captured, enslaved, and somehow pulled off a daring escape. This wasn't just a tragic backstory. This brutal reality forged every single decision he would ever make. Because all of that, the betrayal from the old system, surviving by his own grit, it led him to a completely revolutionary idea. It became the fuel for his rise to power, a rise based on merit. And what's really fascinating here is that his entire philosophy was shaped by one single relationship, his conflict with his Anda, his blood brother, a man named Jamuka. You see, these two friends had completely opposite ideas for how to build a nation. Jamaica was old school. He was all about the traditional aristocracy. Power comes from your family, from your noble bloodline. It's just the way things were done. But Temujin, he proposed something that was, for that time, absolutely radical, a meritocracy. He basically said, I don't care who your father was. I care if you're loyal, and I care if you're good at your job. And this wasn't just some nice idea. He put it into practice right away. He promoted his generals based on skill, not their family name. He shattered tradition by taking soldiers from the tribes he just defeated and folding them right into his own army. Get this, he even had his mother adopt orphans from his fallen enemies, making them part of his own clan. And maybe most importantly, he promised that the riches from any conquest would be shared with all of his loyal soldiers, not just the nobles. Can you imagine the kind of loyalty that built? It was personal, it was fierce, and it was pretty much unbreakable. So, this whole meritocracy system wasn't just a way to build an army. It became the actual blueprint for innovating an entire empire. And what an empire it was. At its peak, we're talking about nearly 12 million square miles of land under Mongol control. To put that into perspective for you, that's roughly the size of the entire continent of Africa. Just let that sink in for a minute. So that leads to a huge question, right? How on earth do you control an empire that big back in the 13th century? You've got no phones, no internet, no modern tech whatsoever. Well, the answer was a masterpiece of logistics called the YAM. It was basically the world's first international postal system, and it became the central nervous system for the entire Mongol Empire. Think of it like this. He set up a huge network of relay stations all across the empire. Each one was stocked with fresh horses, food, and riders, ready to go at a moment's notice. An official messenger could ride flat out to a station, jump onto a fresh horse, and keep going. This system allowed them to travel up to 125 miles in a single day. That was like the speed of light back then. Suddenly, military orders, intelligence, and messages were flying across the continent. But the YAM was just one piece of his grand design. He created the Yasa, a unified legal code that outlawed things like the old tribal blood feuds. He adopted a single written language to standardize communication. And in a move that was centuries ahead of its time, he granted religious freedom across his diverse empire. He even established diplomatic immunity, making it safe for ambassadors and merchants to travel. You see, he wasn't just conquering lands, he was building a nation. Which brings us, of course, to the great paradox of Genghis Khan, his deeply complicated legacy. Because we simply can't ignore the other side of the coin. He said it himself, I am the punishment of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have inflicted a punishment such as me upon you. He saw his own brutality as a cleansing fire. And his campaigns were just legendarily savage. There's no other way to put it. We're talking about using civilians as human shields in battle. We're talking about completely annihilating the populations of entire cities that dared to resist him. And yet, and this is the incredible contradiction, that very same brutality brought the entire Silk Road under one single political rule for the first time in history. This led to a period called the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace, which connected the trade, technology, and cultures of East and West on a scale that had never been seen before. Even on his deathbed, his ambition was just as vast as his empire. His last words were, supposedly, "I have conquered for you a large empire, but my life was too short to take the whole world." And that leaves us with a really difficult question, one that echoes through history. The brutal conqueror was also the revolutionary innovator, which forces us to ask, can visionary innovation ever truly exist without ruthless ambition?